Is modern masculinity failing to attract women? Are we just redefining what it means to be a man? What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Y'all already know where you at. You know who you with. It's Touché here on Date Theory. Listen, today we're going to talk about men and masculinity. We're going to explore how masculinity has evolved, whether it's still attracting women like we used to, and the toxic traits that we need to be aware of. So let's get right into today's episode and talk about men and masculinity and what that means. First, let's define modern masculinity. Gone are the days when being a man meant simply being tough. Those days are gone. Men ain't built the same like that anymore. And that could be a good or bad thing. The reason why is that we have evolving traits. See, modern masculinity today includes emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and mutual respect. Now, I'm a first generation American. I can tell you right now, my father, grandfather, and father figures in my family, those aren't things that they actually ever considered. I mean, men now are more open to talk about their feelings, more open to seeking help for mental health. Those aren't things that traditional men would ever consider. I mean, modern masculinity is all about embracing both being strong and being vulnerable. Now, it's hard to find the balance of traditional and new values. While some of those traditional traits like protection and responsibility still remain, men now are embracing the ideas of equality and empathy. Those are being just as valued as our traditional ones. I mean, men are taking more active roles in parenting and household duties. Those aren't things that I could tell you that my father figures have ever cared about. I mean, the surveys are showing that men are actually seeking more of deep emotional connections now than they ever have before. But the question is modern masculinity still attracting women today? Now, this is an interesting topic because it's like a yes and no, right? Because a lot of women are actually seeking men who are emotionally available or have emotional intelligence and can articulate the way that they feel. But sometimes being so in tune with your emotions can take away some of that stoicism or possibly toughness that a lot of women do seek in a male partner. But finding that balance is actually one of the most difficult parts. The question is, how do you do that? I mean, there are studies that show that women are finding emotional intelligence and kindness to be very attractive and one of the most demanding traits in a partner. But everything is like a give or take. Confidence is always going to remain attractive, but women still want you to show some form of humbleness and self-awareness. I mean, they want you to be a confident yet humble man who uplifts them, right? It sounds good in theory, but it can be a lot to juggle at the same time. But if you don't have the right balance, then potentially what can happen if you are just one way? Well, that's where the toxic masculinity traits actually come in. And we see the plethora of alpha males that come up from nowhere on social media. And now it's becoming more and more of a movement because men have no idea how to lead and look to someone else to lead them and tell them who they are. Now, I've actually witnessed a lot of these toxic masculinity traits being exposed throughout social media. I mean, the over-aggression, the want and the need to be dominant, the emotional suppression that someone must put on themselves and others. It's very alarming. I mean, you got men who refuse to show vulnerability because they don't want to look like a or you got the others who need to belittle people to feel superior. Now, I think that those men personally have deep seated insecurities that they haven't addressed. And that's why they look for these false prophets to tell them how to be a man and how to actually conduct themselves and build their life. But if there's one thing I know for sure that is the most attractive to anybody, it's authenticity. But if you continue with these toxic behaviors, you're going to find yourself damaging relationships and just perpetuating all these harmful stereotypes. I mean, there's a reason why women are putting the same things on their dating profile for the guys that they don't want. It's because a lot of guys are acting the same way when I guarantee you that's really not you. How many guys have you spoke to that told you, I need a woman to be submissive? Oh, I'm an alpha. I lead. Bro, I can't tell you how stupid that is for you to say as a man. Like, fellas, y'all need to stop with that shit. Because let me tell you something. I want y'all to really listen up. Come here. If you got to say what you are, then that's not you. Believe me, when you are who you know you are, people are going to feel it. A lion doesn't need to tell anyone that he's a lion. He just knows that there's lambs. Now, don't get me wrong. Masculinity is very important. And in some ways, I do feel like we have collectively moved apart from the healthy aspects of masculinity that our society definitely does need. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to be a provider. There's nothing wrong with you wanting to be a protector. Now, those things are what I feel all men should aspire to be, but it's all about how you go about it. You don't want to find yourself too far one way. Balance is definitely key, and it is very difficult, but believe me, if you can find the perfect equilibrium, you're going to be so much more attractive, because there's nothing like being a confident man who knows how to articulate the way he feels, but still gives off that fuck around and find out feeling. I do feel that men do need to embrace vulnerability more. Being vulnerable with yourself first is probably one of the hardest things that you can do. And sharing that with somebody else is even harder. And if you're able to actually conquer that, believe me, you're a strong person. That does not make you a weak person, because a lot of people don't know how to confront themselves. And you're not a punk if you go ahead and you need support from your friends or other people when it comes to how you feel mentally. There's nothing wrong with that, fellas. What's wrong is if you keep that shit inside because you want to portray this image that you feel like you need to be, and then you act out in a way that is completely not who you are. Then that's the real issue. That's when you really a punk. But I am more so curious to know how y'all feel about modern masculinity. Ladies, do y'all feel that men are not as attractive as the traditional man, or do you feel like the modern man is the type of man that you want to be with? Or maybe you do want a mix of both. Either way, let me know in the comments below, because I really want to engage this topic with more men and just start taking out these toxic behaviors that I've seen in dating. There's really no need for them. Like, our society isn't going to get better until we start having healthier relationships with one another. But I do hope that y'all enjoyed the video. Thank y'all so much for tuning back in with me. And if you did find this to be a bit insightful and you had some value from it, please give it a thumbs up, like, comment, share with your friends, and don't forget, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. I got a lot more coming for y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in with me again. Y'all already know where you at and you know who you with. Touché. I'm gonna see you on the next one. Peace.